Viper isn't dead. Before you run away, let's explain why we're going to be using Viper. For that, we're going to delve into the gear used. There's Viper. You all know it. Used to be great. Now it's kind of crappy. But for this build, it works wonderfully. Every 4 seconds after a melee attack, 100% proc chance, it does 8k damage. Poison damage. But it does it over 4 seconds. That's the change. Now it just does it over 4 seconds. This adds some nice pressure. We're going to be cutting the damage in half because of Battle Spirit, so it's only going to be like 3k because people have resistances. And that's, you know, it sucks. But for this build, it's going to work. So now that we have a 100% uptime on a poisonous dot, that actually adds pressure. It's not a shit dot. We have the Poisonous Serpent set. Some people have come out with builds using this set. Most of them are things like stam DKs who have poison abilities, and that works great for them. You know, I remember looking at this set a long time ago going, but we have Viper. Now that Viper's dead, some of us have kind of resorted to using Viper plus this. Now this set is pretty interesting. When you deal damage with a light or heavy attack, which we happen to be doing a fair amount of for Nightblade, you have a 50% chance to deal not 1k. Well, it can be 1k because of Battle Spirit and resistances, but it's going to be 2k as a tooltip more often, but here it says 4.4k. And that's just some bursty poison damage that happens every 1 second, so as long as you can get a light attack off every 1 or 2 seconds, it has a 50% chance of proc. That's really high. It's very high burst potential. Now, for weapons, we've got a dagger for extra crit, which is sharpened, and Nirnhoned axe. Axes are great. They apply bleeds. Bleeds, while they don't always do a fuck ton of damage unless you're stacking weapon damage, they go right through resistances, which means they hurt on tanks. That's awesome. For your back bar, you want a two-hander of some sort. You probably want it in the Poisonous Serpent set. It's better, but it's not 100% required to make this build work. It's not a make or break deal if you don't have one of these. Now, I am on the PTS. This is all gold because, you know, PTS makes you rich. I have this Nirnhoned because that will increase the healing done by our rally and by our vigor when we carry over the front bar. I'm not sure if it carries over the vigor for other players, but I'm 90% certain it carries over to the vigor that happens for you, yourself, the player. We want all weapon damage since we're using Bloodspawn. If you're not using Bloodspawn, you might want 1 recovery glyph, especially if you're going to be going into no CP. If you're going to go into no CP, then use Bloodspawn and 1 recovery glyph. Now, I'm not actually going to be talking about CP in this video. That is your personal preference. I myself am not perfect at math. I don't want to give anyone drastically misleading information. And CP is oftentimes has some personal preference to it as well, so I'm not going to be doing CP, just like a lot of my other videos that do build advice. Now for skills, on our back bar, we've got Rally. That's our burst heal and our two-hander. You know, it's overall just a good skill. Reaching Strikes, this is our flex spot. You can put other things here like Shadow Image. Just be aware of the fact you're going to be eating through your magic a lot more, because your main CC is going to use magic, Cloak uses magic, so I find Leeching Strikes to help out with stacking damage. It also restores resources and health on light and heavy attacks, which fits into the theme of a light and heavy attack centric build that's bursty and highly viable. It's perfect. Then we have Shuffle. We can't do heavy armor because of the sets, so we're using medium. And if you're using medium, you should probably be using Shuffle for removing snares and immobilizations and granting immunity for 5 seconds. That's very powerful and helps a lot of stamina builds survive. The major evasion in its own right is a pain in the ass to deal with as someone who fights stamina builds a lot and doesn't use Shuffle themselves. Vigor is a bread and butter heal over time. You want a fair amount of uptime on this skill. It'll kind of help carry you and even people around you through battles, which is very helpful. It lasts about 5 seconds. Now, Soul Tether is our ultimate because I don't have anything better to put on this bar, unfortunately. Soul Tether does some nice damage. It's not great. It's really expensive. But if I have full ult going into a fight, then I've got no problem, hitting a bunch of opponents because it's an AoE stun. That's kind of helpful, and it heals me, so I'm not going to complain too much. We also have the Siphoning passive, which adds healing done on the bar if you have a Siphoning ability slotted. Now on our front bar, we have Relentless Focus. Relentless Focus gives us access to an ability called Assassin's Scourge after 5 light or heavy attacks, and it gives us some nice little buffs to our damage and our recovery. Now this again fits into our light and heavy attack centric build. There, I just applied Viper to it, and there, Venom just procs. But after a few attacks, I'll have Merciless up, and that was a 25k hit on the dummy. Cut that in half, add resistances, that'll be 5-7k hit on the player in Cyrodiil. Not a bad skill. Now, our spammable, we have Surprise Attack. Great spammable, does a lot of damage, and applies Major Fracture, not Breach. Major Fracture reduces your physical resistance for a certain amount of time. This has about 17 seconds on it. It's also a Shadow skill, which means this spammable will help us keep up our Shadow Barrier passive, which gives us more mitigation, more survivability. It's a great skill. We can also use Cloak to set an enemy off balance, and Heavy Attack for double resources, which helps negate any sustain issues. So you don't have to put a crap ton into Master at Arms. You can put some into Thaumaturge, you can put some into Mighty, Piercing, etc., etc. You can switch this out. I don't. Killer's Blade is our Execute. It's a great skill, especially in open world. I'm not sure what you would swap this out with if you did swap it out, but I wouldn't. Here's our main CC, aside from Incap. Fear goes through Block, which means it's awesome for dealing with tanks and Magic Dragonites, all that sort of thing. It also hits 2 people instead of just 1. In the open world, that's actually really, really nice to have. Rending Slashes is a very powerful, but kind of negligible damage over time ability. The initial hit is pretty underwhelming, albeit there is a snare, which is part of why we use it. It goes through physical resistance because it's a bleed. That's really, really nice for dealing with tanks, but the snare it applies is pretty brutal, and it helps keep people near us, and we don't have a gap closer on, so that's kind of a necessity. It's not too expensive either. Now for Incap, we have a fairly inexpensive, hard-hitting, debuffing, stunning element. Literally stunning. But this is a great skill because it increases damage done to a target by our dots, by our procs, by every single thing we're doing. Now, you could swap this out for the dual wield ultimate Laceration, but I typically would not. Vigor is found in the Assault skill line, and you could use Caltrops, but your sustain will be bloody terrible then. Now, for consumables, I tend to use Dubious Gamorrean Throne. You can use Jewels of Misrule if you want more magic regen, but this will give us the most damage, the most bang for your buck, the most sustain, and you want to hit these numbers approximately, and this is the best way I found to do that for myself. You can use the Warrior Mundo Stone. As an option, you have the Serpent, especially if you're going into non-CP. Non-CP having more sustain is generally better. Now, for potions, because of the Dragon Bones change to movables, I don't have a perfect option for you, and it's more personal anyways. So for this, we have an Essence of Immovability, which grants you immunity to knockback and disabling effects for 5.7 seconds. This can be boosted by certain passives. But the main reason I have this potion is because of the Major Expedition buff that it gives you. Having that for almost a minute is really nice as a stamina build if you don't have a bow on your backline. Because on a bow, you can just dodge roll and get Major Expedition. For this, you can't do that. And then we have your Stamina Recovery passive, which is overall a great thing to have. Now that just about wraps it up. Thank you for your time, everyone, and I hope you try this build out and actually use it to its highest potential. Good luck!